Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the 2020 North America EdTech 100, HolonIQ's annual list of the most promising EdTech startups in North America. My name is Bethany Hogan. I'm the VP of Client Experience here at HolonIQ, and I'm joined by our wonderful co-CEOs, Maria Spies and Patrick Brothers. We're also joined by our great friends at LearnLaunch, founder Gene Hammond, who we'll hear from throughout the session. This is the 9th regional map of leading EdTech startups we have released to date, and you'll hear more about that series shortly. And after the session, look out for a recording in your inbox. We'll send it straight after we conclude, and it will also include the map on our site. Okay, we've got a lot to get through in an action-packed 45 minutes, so I'll go ahead and set the scene. Patrick is going to kick us off by sharing a little bit about the global mapping efforts. Then Gene's going to share more about the North American ecosystem and specifically their POV and how early EdTechs emerge and ultimately grow and scale. Then Maria is going to announce the North America EdTech 100, hooray, and share more about the makeup and what makes the North American map different from the rest of the world. And then we are very, very lucky to have leaders from 3 North American EdTech unicorns with us today. From the US, we'll hear from Coursera and Guild, and from Canada, we'll hear from Applyboard. And then we'll close with a summary of how you can learn more about the North America 100 and all the regional maps. So I'll hand it over to Patrick.
Awesome. Thanks, Beth. We thought we'd set the scene before Gene shares more about the ecosystem itself and LearnLaunch's insights by just a few snippets. And all of this is available on the HolonIQ website. We started out with the China EdTech 100. Everyone knows China is massive in EdTech. Then we ventured to Latin America and we found a really dynamic and explosive ecosystem there. We looked at Russia and the CIS. There is a lot of activity happening across those markets as well. The Nordic Baltics, very renowned for their education systems and really leading the charge on some more advanced learning and advanced technology efforts. We ventured across to Africa, to the EdTech 50. We really, I think, collectively underestimate the amount of innovation that's happening in Africa. Really, really exciting and very different to other parts of the world. We went to Southeast Asia, again, another really dynamic and explosive in terms of population part of the world. Some really exciting innovation happening there. We stopped in for Australia and New Zealand to capture Oceania as well. Again, lots of great companies focused across the entire education ecosystem. A couple of weeks ago, we announced India and South Asia. India's really on the map in the last few years. There's no way you could miss the innovation that's happening in India of late. And then last week, we announced the Europe EdTech 100 again. Really, again, super exciting innovation happening all across Europe, from Germany, France, Spain, Italy, the United Kingdom, you name it. Innovation is happening everywhere. And so today we are super excited to announce the North America EdTech 100. But before we do, I want to hand over to Gene Hammond, General Partner at LearnLaunch, who I can't think of a better person to share some kind of insights from, given just how long and how deep you've been focusing on the ecosystem at LearnLaunch, Gene. So over to you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Patrick. We're really excited to be here with our HolonIQ friends as they announce the 100 most exciting companies in North America. We, of course, think there's at least 200 exciting companies. So that's just our opinion. As the longest lived accelerator, we have a lot of experience watching little companies try to get up into this complex market and working with them in a range of ways. And our portfolio is growing. It's on the next slide. And we even this summer, we ran a remote accelerator for 5 of the new companies on this portfolio. So it's really been an exciting venture. And I have to say, running an accelerator remotely, talk about doing what you always tell people to do. It's exhausting. So this year has seen essentially all EdTech companies grow. Next slide, Patrick. So that We've just seen explosive adoption and matching customer support demands. There's a lot of restructuring of products and getting the companies ready for remote work, and really scaling is off the charts. We've also seen a lot of new companies starting to show up. Not only the many teachers we've always seen, but now parents, investment bankers, and everybody wants to come in and tell us they know how to make education better. And there's growing funding sources. We're seeing new funders come in as there's an increasing focus on consumer plays, et cetera. So really, it's been a really exciting time to be in this market. So we're going to flash through a couple of the ways that the ecosystem is supported. First, accelerators like ourselves and other support organizations. There continues to be lots of supporters in the space. And then funders. As I mentioned, we're starting to fill in the funding map. There used to be a big white space in the middle of this map, and now we're starting to see people covering everything across the early stage, and of course, increasingly more and more out into private equity and roll-ups and even larger plays going on in the space. But really, 2020 has been a story about pain and concern, right? The spotlight's been focused on education, and as we said before, now everybody's an expert. The social and emotional health of all the participants in the system are at risk. Parents are struggling, teachers are drowning, professors are confused, and college students feel they need to act out. Testing is on hold, so many of the education systems that use assessment to navigate are rudderless. There's lots new consumer models sprouting up. We're not sure that they'll all persist, but the new data shows that families with wealth are exiting to pods at the same time that newly homeless families can't even get on to online school. So K-12 is not the only place that enrollment is dropping. We thought that cost-effective community colleges would grow across the complex COVID year, but nope, they've got a huge drop in students. And universities who were used to a lot of international students to fill that tuition up, they're inspecting the bottom line pretty carefully and wondering what is the real value of a campus experience and what can they charge for it. Universities are also out talking to the OPXs to help them fill in the gaps, and MOOCs are seeing exponential growth. Boot camps and all the alternative models are also more visible, and the great ones are certainly growing. And all the companies that are addressing pathways to works are really trying to find the right mix so that they can get to the workplaces in a meaningful way. We've been saying that many chief learning officers are running a medium-sized university. And the big news is that all of these people in pain are spending money to stop the pain. And that's the reason why all of the HolonIQ 100 are all growing, and probably the next 100 after them, and why many of them are finding fundraising a really fast conversation. And many smaller companies are coming up behind. So really, this is a COVID year where there's been a lot of pain in education, but it's a pain that's being addressed with powerful growth for EdTech companies. So back to hear about what we've got going on in the HolonIQ 100 North America.
Jean, thank you so much. It's such a wonderful and thoughtful kind of insight into what's happening. And as I said, like, you've just been focused on this space so intently through the evolution of the decade that's brought us to where we are today too. So we really appreciate you sharing that insight with everyone. And kudos again to you and the team for the amazing work that you do to help accelerate the companies that are helping kind of alleviate, hopefully, some of that pain, but also take us to new spaces from learning and work. So thank you again. All right. Let's move on to the 100. So very quickly, by way of introduction, let's talk a little bit about eligibility. This is really hard. Essentially, we have to draw a line between EdTech and workforce or HR. Where you draw that line is really tricky sometimes because of the trends that you heard from Jean and around the world. But we do our best to try and make a very clear distinction where clear is possible to do that. And we are focused, and you'll hear more next year from us about our focus on HR and workforce. The companies all need to be pre-exit, and that's kind of the best way of describing. They're not generally haven't been acquired, generally don't have a controlling stake. For the most part, they're drawing on venture or growth funding. They're not listed, so they cannot have public equity as well. They're generally less than 10 years old. We do bend those rules sometimes where some of the other criteria are stronger. Companies that are 20 years old are almost certainly out of scope. But 10 years ago was around the time we saw really strong emergence and growth of this space as well. And then finally, technology is not just software. It's not all SaaS. It's all forms of innovation as well across that. How do we come up with the 100? Well, as Jean mentioned, we were actually and had a very serious internal conversation about announcing a 200 today. We could announce a 500. We could announce 1,000 if we wanted to. We essentially evaluate thousands, in this case, more than 2,000 companies who are applied or nominated across 5 key criteria. And this is consistent globally as well. Firstly, we look at the quality and attractiveness of the specific market the company operates. That's not necessarily geographic. Sometimes it's segment, sometimes it's a combination. We look at the quality of the product, the uniqueness of the product, and we look at some evidence of demonstrated impact, not just an idea, something that has been applied. We look at the team, we look at the team's expertise, we look at the diversity of the team as well. Team is super important. We look at capital, and that's not just about raising money, that's about sustainability. That's about being able to secure your the resources that you need to have the impact that you've set out to create. And then finally, we look at momentum. We look at a variety of indicators for demonstrated positive changes in size, velocity, and impact of the team as well. The next slide is the 100. So before I get there, I have to say, and again, this echoes kind of Jean's remarks, is perhaps the hardest part of the 100 is the teams that didn't make it into the 100. There literally are in North America thousands of teams who are setting out to have a very positive impact on the future of learning and on the future of work as we blend into those parts. And so we wrestle extraordinarily with that, and kudos to all the teams who are out there on their own mission, who are not part of the 100 but represent the cohort that we're looking at. So without further ado, here is the 2020 North America EdTech 100. We'll be posting this on the HolonIQ website. Give the team about an hour after this post as well for you to scan. But I'm going to hand over to Maria to share a little bit more about the 100.
Thanks, Patrick, and congratulations to all those logos, all those companies and teams that are on the map in front of you. I know everyone's scanning that right now, and as Pat said, it'll be on our website in an hour or so. It's a super interesting, given we've been around the world and had a look at different markets. Each market has their own personality, and what we see here, and what's also seen in our long time analysis of the funding that's happening in the North American market, it's a very solid foundation of innovation in education, long-standing and very solid across different parts of the value chain. Essentially, one of the things that we see in the North American market is not only focus on technology itself, but new models. Very innovative new models come and grow out of the North American market. We can see that here in terms of those university partnerships or alternate models. If you jump to the next slide, Patrick, just a little bit of analysis more on some of the categories. So, not surprisingly, workforce and workforce upskilling, workforce training, the workforce sector in education dominates, sort of. It doesn't dominate fully, but perhaps surprising to see so many strong teams in the K-12 and higher education space, because there's a lot of narrative around workforce upskilling at the moment. But it is great to see such innovation and growth in that K-12 and higher education space as well. If we continue on to the next one. So just a little bit of analysis on location. I don't know how competitive everybody is in the US about location, but the Bay Area, there's very strong teams there, followed by New York, Boston, of course, Canada. This is not only US, but North America. So Canada teams as well, Northwest, Midwest and Southern California. And then the next one, which is also green, not labeled, I think is Texas. So really we see this sort of spread in a few key areas, but spread across the country. And as Patrick noted before, in terms of the age, a year founded of these companies, I think it's interesting to see the almost 50% of companies in this 100 are founded, 6 to 9 years ago. I think that says something about the time it takes to really sort of accelerate in the education market. But it's great to see about a third of these companies being 3 years or less old. And so there's lots of innovation coming through. If we jump into the next one, Patrick, just in terms of the segmentation here, and again, this is a very balanced map, and that represents the market. Jobs and upskilling, especially in the area of simulated training, that's quite strong at the moment. In terms of learning support, learning environments and student support, boot camps and alternate models, learning content management systems. These are models that are supporting B2B. They're B2B models, very strong at the moment. There was a time when everyone was racing to B2C, but actually B2B is super strong. And so again, one of the other things I just want to pull up and point out there is wellness and mental health. There are a lot of innovations in this space right now, supporting college students, supporting K-12 students, supporting workers in sort of health, mental and physical health. As Patrick said, we'll have this map up and this analysis up on our website in an hour or so. But that gives you a bit of a taste for the composition of the EdTech 100.
Awesome. Oh, do you want to quickly touch on the landscape, Maria?
Okay, so yeah, one more thing. So you may have seen this taxonomy before. This is HolonIQ's way of segmenting the global learning landscape. Essentially, it's a market value chain or segmentation. We track innovations across these 50 clusters, everything from admissions platforms to skills verification and everything in between. And so that's some of the ways that we track the innovation that's happening in these different markets around the world.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, now to definitely my favorite part of this session, which is actually meeting some of the teams who are on the 100. We are so incredibly lucky to have senior leaders from 3 of the region's superstars, from Guild, from Applyboard, and from Coursera, who are each going to share just a short overview to give you a feel for the teams and the people who are leading innovation across North America. So it's a real pleasure to introduce Bijal Shah, Chief Technology and Payments Officer from Guild. Bijal, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you would, we'd love to hear a little bit more about your work at Guild.
Thank you, Patrick, for the introduction. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for this honor. Guild's super excited about being represented alongside all of these incredible companies that are trying to change the EdTech landscape. My presentation is going to focus on kind of 3 components of what Patrick outlined in kind of the criteria. So market, product, and momentum. And I will go pretty quickly here, just given the time slot to work through this, but you feel free to reach out to me after this if you have questions as it relates to my presentation. So to get started, from a market perspective, Guild's on a mission to unlock opportunities for America's workforce through education and upskilling. We work with some of the largest employers in the United States, companies like Walmart, Chipotle, Disney, and Lowe's, to build education benefits for frontline employees, managers, and other ranks inside of the company. We help employees go back to school in a debt-free fashion, and we think this is really important to helping the company also realize education is a means to actually enabling their corporate strategy. It helps to upskill their workforce as well as drive retention and recruitment, which are all really important efforts required in order to build a sustainable business. We, as I mentioned before, in addition to partnering with partnering with employers. We also work with nonprofit universities, and our goal is to help enable 88 million working adults to go back to school and actually drive economic opportunity and outcomes for them as America's workforce and landscape continues to change. Next slide, please. One of the key and innovative differences between, from a product perspective, between Guild and kind of what's traditionally out there today is that traditional ed benefits very much focuses in a way and is deployed in a way that actually like limits inclusion and doesn't necessarily optimize for student outcomes or employee success. And so we've built a tech and payments integration system and have been able to disrupt how we actually administer benefits and how we help align an employer's corporate strategy to the actual upskilling and programs that are initiated and activated through what we call tuition assistance. Specifically, tuition assistance, the model for tuition assistance helps ensure that employees don't pay out of pocket upfront. This matters a lot because if you think about the populations for a lot of the companies we work for, the frontline employees who could take part in a benefit like this don't actually have the means and the money to be able to pay upfront for their education. And so by turning the model on its head and creating a system that looks more like assistance versus reimbursement, we make sure we drive a more inclusive benefit that more and more individuals can take advantage of. Through this innovative model, we've seen a 2x increase in adoption versus tuition reimbursement for the employer populations we work with. In addition, because we can align the corporate strategy of the company to the actual programs that get administered, we've been able to ensure that there is effective deployment of capital or the benefit by the employer. And we've seen a 41% decrease in cost per student by ensuring that people are going to debt-free programs, taking advantage of prior credits that they might have already earned somewhere else, and ensuring that they actually are embarking on a journey that will support their future career goals and growth opportunities. From an impact perspective, which I think Patrick defined as momentum, there's a few things we do. So again, there's 3 different stakeholders we have in the mix. Patrick, do you mind going to the next slide? Thank you. So there's 3 different stakeholders where, that we are ensuring we create a win-win-win for the student, the employer, and our academic partners that we work with. And when you think about a marketplace model, ensuring that everyone in that model and every stakeholder in that model actually gains value is really important. It reinforces the marketplace when that happens, and it ensures that there is a positive reinforcing loop that continues to drive outcomes for all stakeholders. And so I'll just speak a little bit about each of the stakeholders and what they get. From an employer perspective, at the end of the day, employers care about driving business outcomes and ensuring they do it in a cost-effective way. And when they invest in their employees, they want to make sure they see a return. From the data that we've been able to gather and kind of monitoring our capabilities, in addition to driving things like employee satisfaction and actually the ability to upskill, we've seen a net return of $1.84 for every dollar that an employer actually invests in education benefits. And this comes through things like ensuring that employees retain longer, ensuring that there is actual internal mobility of these employers to help with meeting their corporate strategy, and a whole host of other components that fit into our ROI calculation. The second is the university or the learning provider, as we call it inside of Guild. There is a rich pool of individuals who want to go back to school. They're motivated and their employers are willing to pay on their behalf. And so it leads to a really great win for the academic institution because these are high quality students who are there and have a purpose and want to invest in themselves. And so great from a driving persistence and retention perspective for the actual learning program and to drive outcomes. And then for the student, in addition to actually reducing student loan debt, which I think is incredibly important and a huge crisis in our country, we actually provide coaching, advising, and technology support for these students to help them actually succeed. And when you think about the population that we serve, a lot of them might have already tried to go to school at some point in their lives already, and they need an extra support system or a boost to help them actually realize their potential. And so we spend a lot of time through these different vehicles helping ensure that they have great outcomes, and not just education outcomes, but eventually upskilling and career mobility outcomes that we think are really important to driving what Guild's mission is, which is unlocking opportunity. The last thing I'll say is on this slide, I call out one of the employees of Discover who's taken advantage of this benefit and has gone back to get a degree in business management and leadership. She wasn't able to do that without the support of Discover, and it's pretty meaningful both from helping her see that she can accomplish something, and then knowing that her degree can lead to internal mobility inside of Discover. And so thank you for letting me take some time to share what Guild does, and happy to answer questions offline. You can reach me at bijal@guildeducation.com.
Awesome, Bijal, that was amazing. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing a bit more about Guild. There's no doubt, as Maria said, Guild is one of those teams that is globally like making new models, like completely reconfiguring value for all these parties. It's so impressive how much impact you guys have had so quickly, and there's no doubt you're just getting started as well. So thank you, Bijal. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right, moving right along. Again, really, really lucky to have Martin Bessiri, founder and CEO of Applyboard, with us today. Martin, we're just thinking perhaps you could share a little bit about Applyboard for those, believe it or not, there's people out there who might not know Applyboard so far, but the work that you've done and where Applyboard is headed as well.
For sure. Thank you very much for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin Bessiri. And Applyboard, we are a 5-year-old company based in Waterloo, Ontario. I started the company with my brothers after 3 of us came to Canada about 10 years ago for our studies, and we figured out applying to foreign schools is very, very hard process. It took me a year and a half, and we wasted a lot of money and energy because we just didn't have all the information. So 5 years ago, we were like, what if we can index all the requirements and knowledge of all the universities, and then we can put it on a CRM for the universities, for the agencies, like a study abroad agencies in different countries, and then we put it in an infrastructure, like a marketplace where the students, universities, and the agencies can do the transaction together. And then on top of it, we put a SaaS where it become a common application where students can apply to Canada, US, Australia, or UK with one application, with one common application through one portal. The problem would be solved. We were naive to think that it's very, very doable and it's an easy solution. So we got into the work, and then we figured out, oh my God, this is so much harder than what we thought. But if we were already in it, and we loved it because the impact of the work that we had on the students was phenomenal. So our model is we partner with universities and colleges who want to bring diversity, who want to bring high quality international students from all over the world. And we provide our software and infrastructure to them and to these recruitment partners that we have in over 50 countries in the world, and to any students on the internet. So we are lucky that last year we had the students from over 110 countries coming to North American universities, and in April we launched to UK universities as well. So things going very well, and now we have students going to UK as well, and in Australia we better launch to Australia in September. We better launch to Australia as well. Now students can literally with one application see which universities or colleges in any of these 4 countries would have accept them if they would apply, what are the documents they need, what are the steps they need to make, what are the payments they need to make, and every of the actions they can just do from there. They can make their payment, they can upload their document, they can upload the recommendation letter or any of that from one portal. And we are happy that we assisted over 120,000 students from all over the world, and we are working with about 1,400 schools and colleges in our network, and is growing. Our team is about 670 people, mostly from immigrants and people who've done a study abroad and who resonate with the problem, and also a lot of amazing local people who believe education is a right for human being. So they would love to work to make it accessible for students around the world. And that's a quick summary of what Applyboard is.
So impressive, Martin. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going through your mind as we go through COVID and as we look through to the next decade? What should we expect to see from Applyboard just as we look forward a little bit?
Yes, as you know, right now, not only we sell we provide on-campus experience, we are also providing online experience when the students, for example, from India or China, they're taking their classes completely online. And it worked very well. And COVID in reality create a lot of opportunities for all the higher education, that they understand that international studies is no longer only about bringing the students to their campus, and a lot of them are thinking about there's going to be a long hill of for example, the students from the other side of the world taking their classes online or partial of their classes online. But for example, from a bachelor degree, think about it, 1 or 2 year online, or even 3 year online and 1 year on campus. So the opportunities that it's unlocking is phenomenal from that point of view. So we see COVID was a hardship that opened a lot of people's eyes and made everyone open-minded, and at the same time they also made the higher education in our sector very confident that they could change, and they could change the way that they recruit, they could change the way that they teach.
Awesome. So impressive. It's always, I always get energy from speaking to you, Martin. You're always so optimistic and so much energy, and we've just been so impressed watching Applyboard grow. You've obviously, like you said, really difficult problem to solve, and what's so impressive, I think, about the work that you and your team do is you just never gave up and you just kept going, and it's so impressive how big Applyboard is today. Kudos for having such a diverse team. I mean, Applyboard is off the scale in terms of diversity and those team scores as well. So big thank you for joining us today. Kudos on the work Applyboard's doing. We can't wait to see where Applyboard will head from here. So thank you so much.
For sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Martin. All right. From one unicorn to the next, how lucky are we? I'm really excited to introduce Leah Belski, who's the Chief Enterprise Officer at Coursera. Of course, Coursera needs no introduction as well. Leah, perhaps you can share a little bit about your work and Coursera.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for this award. And it's an honor to be part of this community and to join you today. So I thought I'd just briefly tell you about the Coursera story. So if you could flip to the first slide. So Coursera at the highest level is what we think of it as a learning ecosystem for lifelong learning. So what we do is we pull together over 150 global universities, 50 top companies who create learning products on the platform. This has attracted a world of learners, over 76 million learners, as well as over 6,400 institutions, businesses, governments, and campuses who use these products to upskill their institutions. So this is the Coursera ecosystem, and there's lots of interesting network effects that cause each part to grow and that cause these different nodes to reinforce each other and add more value. Next slide. So as I said, I particularly lead the enterprise business. It's a business that was started a little bit later in Coursera's history and has really taken off by storm. So we're partnering with companies largely who are working with us to transform their companies to help their workers acquire future digital skills. We're partnering with universities who are trying to upgrade the type of education they are deploying on campuses. To give you a sense, right now in the US, and actually it's not far off in India, only 40% of students have the skills they need to actually enter the workforce. So even in a field like computer science, you could have students who study for 4 years and still don't have the skills to get a degree in a basic software engineering job. So we're addressing that big gap. And then governments now, and particularly during COVID, are doubling down and figuring out how they can invest both in workers who have lost their jobs, but also workers who need to reskill for a changing economy. Next slide. Do you want to switch slides, Patrick? Great. And I'll tell you a little bit of how this works. So at the core of our platform, you see right there in the center is the Google IT Support Certificate. So this is an example of a career pathway. It's a certificate pathway built by Google. It takes someone who may have had no technical skills at all, may have been earning no money or $20,000, that type of salary range. And once they complete it, they are qualified to get a job in IT. And so what we do is we've taken that certificate, we've made it available on our consumer platform. We've also partnered with many different nonprofits in partnership with Google who provide wraparound services and support to learners. We've created over 65 hiring pathways, partnering with leading companies that are interested in hiring these individuals into their workforce. And that same certificate also articulates into a number of our online degrees on the Coursera platform. So should you take that certificate and then realize I want to continue and have a full bachelor's degree in computer science, you could then continue and go to University of London. So this is the core of the ecosystem and the proposition. For learners, we're offering them a pathway to go from very little education in certain fields through to skills that are good enough to get a job. For companies, we're helping them fill key employment gaps. And then for our university partners, we're essentially providing a pathway for them, both our corporate and our university partners. We're providing a pathway for them to access this ecosystem of learners. Next slide. Or you can just build it. So that gave you one example of Google. And if you build the slide, this is an example. We're going to have tens of these, what we call them as gateway certificates, but many, many different pathways that allow people to transform their careers into new areas. I highlight these only because I think they're an interesting example of the ecosystem coming together. You know, the core of Coursera also historically has addressed people who have bachelor's degrees and have started their careers in one field and want to upskill and reskill into another area. But we're growing in many different areas. So next slide. So it has been a really challenging and interesting year. And I think the truth is that we've seen ourselves at the nexus of two different types of disruption that are happening in the economy. One, we're seeing a big, huge push into workforce automation and digitalization of the workforce. So if you look at the high-level stats, it looks like by 2025, there will be over 85 million jobs that are displaced. Estimates that 44% of the core skills that workers have will need to be realigned to serve the jobs of the future. And then you bring in COVID. So many of the layoffs that we saw during COVID, there's actually an expectation that those jobs will never continue, and that so many of these jobs will be automated, and that the companies that emerge after this recession, so to speak, will look very different than the ones that started before. And so what this has created is a huge need both on the part of learners and workers who need to get back into the economy, as well as companies. There's a need to really upskill for this rapidly changing economy. So go to the next slide. And so in March, we launched a couple of key initiatives, and I'll share them with you because it's been, I think, just an amazing story of company innovation, of sort of rapid response to changing times, but also business model innovation. So we launched what we call the Workforce Recovery Initiative, where we made our entire platform available to governments who wanted to make Coursera available to their citizens who are displaced by COVID. We also launched the Campus Response Initiative. So you remember back in April, there was an estimate that over 1.8 billion students were now learning at home. And so we offered universities a chance to use the Coursera platform for free, either to immediately transition online, or to allow their students to continue engaging with new skills while they were at home. And these two initiatives took off, and they were tremendously impactful. And I would say from a business perspective, they also allowed us to realize the power of a freemium business model. And so Coursera is now very much iterating. If you heard of Coursera in the early days, it actually started with the free MOOCs. And now we're seeing at the enterprise side as well, there's an opportunity to engage with many different types of institutions through a free enterprise offering, which is what you see with a lot of the top enterprise companies, the Slacks, the Dropbox, the Cloudflares of the world. So next slide. And so this is where we are today. There's actually, we've gone from serving over 100 to 150 global universities to over 3,700 universities and colleges around the world. So just a tremendous expansion of the number of institutions that Coursera is reaching. Also very global. So unlike a lot of the EdTech businesses and a lot of startups in general who grow up, they often start in North America, they expand to Europe and Australia, they then maybe go to APAC. We saw a radically different distribution of learners and partners come onto the platform. So huge penetration in places like Iraq, Egypt, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, just really different from what you see from a typical growth story as well. Next slide. And I'll end with just an example of what to me was one of the most exciting partnerships. So the state of New York, as COVID came upon us, launched Coursera for workforce development. There are a bunch of different workforce boards that made Coursera available to their populations. And the state of New York recently partnered with us to make Coursera available to any unemployed workers in New York statewide. And I think it's a fascinating case because it really represents the next wave and the next way of thinking about workforce development. Traditionally, workforce development has been in person. It hasn't been focused on really anticipating what are the jobs of the future in a given locale and how can we train people for their future jobs. And in New York in particular, these DOL leaders are incredibly future thinking. They're looking at the future data. They're looking at metropolises like New York and Manhattan in particular and figuring out like what do we want our economy to look like and how can we start building out the infrastructure to help the people who live in our state shape that future economy. So it's been a really challenging and interesting and miraculous few months in some ways, and it's definitely been humbling for me as a leader to lead through this period, and it's been, I think, one of the most meaningful times of my career to be leading a company and having a product that really could help so many people at a time when there was such a tremendous need.
Yeah, that's wonderful, Leah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, the evolution of Coursera, the scale and the reach and, an insight into enterprise, thanks to the work that your team specifically is doing, is just so important in the time that we are, let alone kind of the challenges that we had before COVID. So we do really appreciate, thank you so much for sharing more about Coursera. Thanks for sharing some of your time with us as well. And, Coursera, we just can't keep up with Coursera, that's for sure. So keep doing the amazing work that you guys are doing and setting the example as well for people all around the world about how we can impact the future of learning. Thanks so much, Leah.
Thank you very much.
All right, moving right along, just really briefly, I wanted to pause. Beth or Maria, any reflections after hearing from those three giants, unicorns, startups, dare I say, from North America?
Go ahead, Beth.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what was a very resounding thinking there is COVID being both a very difficult pain, but also a motivator for innovation. And I think that's true in so many places, but clearly in this landscape more than any other.
Yeah, Patrick, my reflection is, I mean, we analyze markets all around the world and we get to know them very well. One of the things about the North American market is that it is, one of the most long-standing. It's one of the largest. It's one of the most long-standing. and yet it remains one of the biggest innovators. It continues to build innovative models, technologies, not just technology, but business models as well. And it sort of goes against the grain, because often things that have been around for a while, whether they be companies or ecosystems, lose some innovation, but not this market. Extremely innovative, very solid. Love to see this continued innovation come out of such an important global market.
Fantastic. I think we're going to close off there. Beth, any final thoughts?
Just want to thank everybody for participating. Maria, Pat, thank you so much too. Yeah, I know we'll be following up with, like I said before, recording in inboxes coming shortly. We're also going to be posting the market maps on the website, HolonIQ.com. Looking ahead, we're just very, very, very excited about an epic 2021. Feels weird to say that, but also really exciting, particularly in a post-COVID global education world. And otherwise, we wish everybody safe and healthy holidays.
Awesome.
Thanks, Beth. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.